After the primer is put on, everything's blended a little better together. It doesn't look quite like so many disjointed pieces. As you can see, I use the same color primer for the ground as I do for the rusty metal because it's rusty metal. And my ground cloth that I use for the table covering is kind of a red oxide color as well, and I chose that on purpose. So everything would kind of blend together on the tabletop and make some kind of visual sense. So, all right, well, once this dries, then we'll get to painting it and make it a proper shack. Now the primer's dry, we'll set about painting this. I just use basic craft paints, nothing fancy. You know, it's just terrain, so I don't need any expensive paint for this. Just need something with nice bold colors, and especially as much as terrain as I plan on doing, need something that's fairly inexpensive. So I start out with some darker gray, and normally I thin my paints, but for things like this, I just put it on neat. I don't bother to really thin it. Cat hair. And I'm just kind of damp brushing or over brushing this base color because I want that red oxide to show through. Give it that rusty impression. And then that's why I'm not on the explosive ordnance disposal team right there. So I spaz out and drop things. And you'll note I don't use any kind of a fancy palette. This is a piece of tile that I got at Habitat for Humanity. I think it cost me all of about 20 cents. So if you have a nice wet palette or anything like that, that's fantastic. You don't really need it for this sort of thing because you're just going to kind of put the paint on and it's not a whole lot of finesse. Especially for rusty metal. Same thing with these brushes. These came from a pack I got at like Tuesday morning for $4.50. Most of the rest of these are all either bulk pack brushes or they're just nothing special. You don't need super great brushes for this sort of work. Your Kolinsky sables will die very quickly doing this type of thing, so best to save them for minis. And I do the wood in the same color because aged wood turns gray, so it makes a very pleasing effect. I guess it would help if I put it up where you could see it. cheap brushes, so the bristles come off, but they're cheap, so that's fine. It doesn't take much to really get that impression of rusty corrugated metal, and you can certainly add spots of heavier rust. We'll get to that, but yeah, just give it a good base coat. And for some color variation, I'm going to add a little green here. Got some of our basing material in our paint. That's not really what we want. And that's a little thick. I'm going to thin that out a little bit. I don't know if you can see that. I'll just thin that out with a little bit of water. Add that. Just to kind of break up the monotony of all that gray. And earlier what I talked about with the contrasting colors is, you know, your patches can be a different color so they really stand out. And same thing with the roof. We'll put a little bit of that on there. You know, and that's the great thing about post-apocalyptic scrappy terrain is there's no real right or wrong. You just do it to taste, and makes you happy, and good job. That's all that matters. Our bristles coming off again. And you don't have to be super neat, but just something that gets that impression of color. That's more than enough. the well-decorated hovel of the future.